Hello, my friends. Can you believe we've gotten to the end of the semester and it is time for our very final assignment, the How Would You Approach It graphic organizer. So I'm very excited that we got here. And the point of this assignment is for you to use these four approaches that we're discussing here: behaviorism, psychoanalysis, I can talk, humanism, and neurobiology, and to think about how would each approach look at a situation. So we're taking the same situation, or in our case, three situations, and looking at it from four different lenses. So that's what we want to do today. All right, so what exactly are we supposed to do with this graphic organizer, right? It's like, okay, this is nice. You're a psychologist. That's what you're imagining here. And it's finally your chance to really apply and get to understand these approaches. So your job is to let me know what you know about the approaches. So you have three situations we're going to discuss today. The first one is road rage, or extreme anger towards another driver. A student pausing to help another student pick up the books he or she dropped, and a new student refusing to join in activities at a new school. And I think I have the last two backwards, so we'll reverse that as we go. And it's really tempting as you're doing this to start with questions like, how do you feel? Why are you doing that? Why do you feel like that? Because that's kind of like what we think of as psychology, right? It's all about feelings and emotions. But believe it or not, the problem with those questions is they're really generic. I don't know which approach you're talking about. And to be honest, they're kind of more cognitive than anything else. And notice that's one of the few that's not on here. So that's one of the dangers I see my students starting with. The other danger is that they will often look to explain the person's actions, right? So let's talk about road rage or extreme anger. Maybe you're like, oh, this is just someone who hates sitting in traffic. He's afraid of being late. Really? You met the guy? You know exactly what's going through his head? You can read his brain? No, right? We don't know. And if you think about this, think about when you go to your doctor's office for a visit. Any good doctor, first thing they're going to do is start to ask you questions, right? What symptoms are you having? How long have you been sick? When you say you have a fever, how high is that fever? So the same thing as a psychologist, I can't just jump in and say, oh, here's the problem, let's solve it. I need to ask questions. And in this case, I actually am thinking about how the person from that approach would ask those questions. So we have to be careful when we're doing this. A lot of times my students just want to dive in and say, here's the answer. But you can't have an answer until you've asked questions and gotten information, right? So it's really important that before you make a diagnosis, which we're not actually going to do here, you ask questions. And we want to do that from the style of each approach. So let's take a look at each approach. Let's start with behaviorism. Behaviorism, as we know, is external. It's all about the observable behaviors that I see. If I can't see it happening, I don't care about it, which means I can't read your mind. I can't say, why do you feel this way? Nope, that's internal. I want to see what I can see of you. Okay? And then the thing about behavior is, for a behaviorist, is that behavior helping us? Is that behavior doing what we need it to do? Well, if it's not getting us what we need in our life, maybe we need to change it. But if it's doing what we need, if it's bringing us the desired results, well, then we should keep it, right? So when we're asking questions and we're focusing on the person, we need to focus on what we can see, not what's going on inside their mind. Okay, remember, it's #external. How about psychoanalysis? Psychoanalysis is internal. Okay, and in fact, it's all about your past, your childhood. What has happened to you that could be shaping your reactions today? Now, it also looks at our unconscious drives, the things that are pushing us from inside, like aggression or passiveness, or, what kind of things push us to want to behave or act a certain way. So with a psychoanalyst, that's another thing we could consider. But very often, one of the primary places we're going to focus is on your childhood and your past. How about humanism? Humanism is all about looking to have control in your life. With a humanist, I'm not going to say to you what happened in your past. That really doesn't bother me that much. As a humanist, I'm going to say, okay, what emotional needs do you have right now? And how are you going to get from where you are now to where you want to go? How are you going to take control of your life? Because the goal in humanism is a deep understanding of yourself, to truly understand yourself and to be the best version of yourself that you can. And that's referred to as self-actualization. So it's not being perfect, but you've met people who you're like, boy, you don't know anything about yourself, do you? Well, the goal with humanism is that you would truly know yourself. You know where you'd make mistakes. You know what you could work on. You know what you're good at. All of these things. And so you want to respond to situations in a way that's always encouraging personal growth. Big keywords there: taking control, personal growth. These are important. And last but not least, our friend neurobiology. And this has an internal approach as well, but it's not going to focus on your feelings or your past. It's going to be focused on the actual genetics and biology going on inside you, especially the brain, right? So let's look at the chemistry of your brain, the physiology, the lobes and the different parts, the hormones that you have in your body, your genetics. Any of these things could be affecting your behavior. Maybe you're genetically predisposed towards a certain outlook or a certain behavior. Maybe there's a chemical or hormonal imbalance. I can say that really, imbalance, that causes your behaviors and causes you to maybe not act the way you should. So these are all things I might look at with these approaches. All right, so I want you to take a moment here and pause the screen and see if you can match these statements right here, questions, with one of the 4 approaches. And I'll give you a hint. There are 7 of them and 4 approaches, so one of them only has 1. So pause your screen here, take a moment, see if you can figure out where to match it, and then we'll move on to the next screen and we'll talk about the answers. Oh, wait, it's okay. I'm kidding. Okay, so hopefully you paused it and we're moving on here. All right, so let's take a look here. We've got 2 parts that we can look at. The first one, I observe anger, yelling, and erratic driving. I'm observing, which means I'm looking at what's outside of you, which means I'm looking at your behaviors, hence behaviorism. And then I might want to think about whether you're reacting appropriately to environmental stimuli, right? Maybe you're not reacting appropriately, maybe you are. So with behaviorism, I can start by kind of listing what I'm seeing. And granted, it's not said that that's what I'm seeing, but if I'm looking at a person with road rage, I could probably guess some of the things I'm seeing, right? How about here? This person is stopping, expressing concern, picking up the books and handing them to the person who dropped them. How should these behaviors be reinforced? Well, we're tempted to think with psychology that we only think about psychology when there's a problem, but really we also need to think about how we could use psychology to improve, right? Even if we don't have any problems. And in this case, this person stopping, expressing concern, picking up books, handing them to the person, that's a good thing, right? I mean, we want everybody to do that. So we want to reinforce it. The next one, were you treated poorly at your other school or other situation where you tried to join a group? Well, we're talking about a person's past, what happened to them before, so that's going to go to psychoanalysis. Are you genetically predisposed towards helping others? Genetically, that's a big clue right there. We're looking at genetics, that's automatically neurobiology. Do you become angry because you feel a lack of control in your life when blocked by traffic? How can you redirect the anger to become a better version of yourself? Personal growth, right? This is all humanism. Humanism's all about taking control of your life. In this next one, do you demonstrate self-actualization by thinking beyond your needs and considering the needs of another? Part of growth can also involve how we interact with others, and helping people, well, that generally brings a sense of satisfaction, right? Sort of a growth. Even if you don't grow every single time, it kind of helps you to feel better about yourself and to maybe to get some positive energy for yourself. So that's a humanist thing, meeting some needs. And then last but not least, perhaps you have a hormonal imbalance that leaves you feeling depressed or rejected by others. So hormonal imbalance, that's neurobiology right there. We're looking at the hormones. So hopefully you found this pretty comfortable to match. If not, hopefully I helped you to understand where we got that from. Let's dive into these actual approaches. So if you were the psychologist, what would you ask or recommend? Notice we're asking, okay? And by recommending, I mean not necessarily saying this is the course of treatment for the person, but more focusing on if you're seeing something there that right away that you might be kind of like, for example, with behaviorism, recommending to change or keep the behavior. So let's look at the first one, road rage or extreme anger towards other drivers. Well, as a behaviorist, what do we want to focus on? Well, we could focus on the person's behavior. What kind of behaviors are they displaying? But we also want to focus on whether or not those behaviors should be kept or changed. Road rage, we probably don't want to keep road rage. That's probably not going to be beneficial, right? So we might want to change that. And we can also think about environmental stimuli. How are environmental stimuli affecting this behavior? Now, sorry, need a little water there. You might be tempted to start answering the question that I just asked you, but that's not what you want to do. You are not here to answer questions. You are here to ask questions, because ideally your patient would then offer you some answers, right? So you're not looking to solve the person's problems. You're not looking to give the reason for their behavior. You're considering their problem and asking to get more information to research their problem, so that then later, if they were to answer these questions, you'd have a better idea of what's going on with them. So for behaviorism, you might want to say, for example, what behaviors do we see that this person is demonstrating? Should these behaviors be kept or changed? It can be that simple. How about psychoanalysis? Well, remember, we look at two things here with psychoanalysis. One is your past, and the other is those unconscious urges. So you could really go at this. There's many ways, but I'm just going to offer two. One, you might want to look at the person's past. What happened in their past that might bring them road rage? Now, again, you don't want to answer that and say, oh, this person was clearly in an accident. We don't know that. But you might also want to look at those unconscious urges. Maybe this person has more anger in them than the normal person. Maybe they're more aggressive than the average person. Maybe that aggression is pushing them on and they have that urge. So you might want to say, have you been in other situations where you feel a lot of anger or aggression? You know, look to get some more information from them to see if you can figure out what's going on. Humanism, you may remember this one from the other slide that you paused me on there. Do you become angry because you feel a lack of control in your life when blocked by traffic? Okay, you know, that's a great question. You're trying to learn to control your life. You're trying to take control of it, and traffic obviously doesn't give you a whole lot of control, right? So how could you redirect that anger and become a better version of yourself? That might be a good thing to ask the person to think about, so that they could say, okay, you know, well, what's causing that anger? They could look more into it. Neurobiology. You know, the reason for this road rage or anger, it could be an issue in the brain, like the frontal lobe's not making the best choices. The amygdala is maybe it's flooding the brain with hormones that cause anger or frustration. There's any number of things, right? Your hormones could be off. So we might want to ask something about, you know, like what kind of genetic predisposition do you have? Or maybe we want to, maybe here we wouldn't necessarily say, you know, could we do a hormone panel on you? But we might say, you know, this patient, maybe we need to look at their chemistry and their hormones to see what's going on there. You know, maybe we need to get a scan of the brain to see if the lobes are working properly. So in this case, you're not answering, you may not be asking a question, you are using the approach a little more medically, but you're indicating a place to start as opposed to saying to the patient, you clearly have this syndrome. Okay. All right, moving on. What would you ask or recommend for a new student who doesn't want to join in activities at his or her school? New school, sorry. So let's imagine a student has moved to GCA or any new school, and this student doesn't seem to be interested in getting involved in anything. And as we know as humans, the less we're connected, the more likely we are to experience depression and to have issues and to be withdrawn. So we kind of, as a psychologist, want to see what we can do to help this person, move out of that situation. Now, I've had students say to me, but what's wrong with that? Well, there are ways to connect that don't necessarily work here. But let's just imagine for some reason we do want to solve this issue. So you might be thinking, but I wouldn't worry about that normally. Okay, that's fine. But let's imagine that we do want to think about this. We do want to help this student to join in other things and to not withdraw. So that's something you want to consider there. So behaviorism. Well, okay, behavior. What behaviors are we seeing? What behaviors might this person be demonstrating? Environment. What could this person be reacting to in the environment, right? And then how could we maybe reward this student for joining in? What punishment, remember punishment doesn't mean quite the same as we normally think, what might decrease the choice to not join in? Maybe the student, maybe we need to set up a reward and a punishment system where if the student joins in the activity, they earn, I don't know, 30 minutes to play video games, but if they don't join in the activity, then they're not allowed to play video games. That's just an idea, but just think about something like that. Psychoanalysis, all about the past, right? All about those unconscious urges. So you might want to look at this from the aspect of past. What could have happened at the other school that might make this student uncomfortable with joining into new activities? Yeah, let's look at their past and see how that could be affecting this. Or maybe they have an unnaturally strong urge to be kind of independent, to kind of withdraw from others. And so perhaps that's something to look at. Are they always unlikely to join into groups? Are they often by themselves? Maybe that's something we need to look at. How about humanism? Oh, that taking control, looking at those emotional needs, figuring out what needs to be met, and then being able to grow as a person and take control of your life, right? So maybe we want to look at the student and say, okay, well, how could you take control of this situation? How could you grow as a person? What kind of activities could you be involved in that would help you to grow? Okay, maybe there's other activities out there the student's not aware of that would help with. And last but not least, I gave you a freebie here in neurobiology. Maybe you have a hormonal imbalance. Maybe you just feel depressed and rejected by others because of that hormonal imbalance. So perhaps that's something we need to look into. Okay, so these are different ways we could look at this particular situation. And notice again, we're looking from the approach of, that approach of psychology. All right, last but not least, helping another student who dropped his or her books. All right, this is probably the one I get the most confusion on. People will say to me all the time, wait, why do we need to worry about a student who's helping someone? Like, that's good, right? We don't need to focus on what's good. Well, remember what I told you earlier. If we don't know what's going on in the brain when things are going right, or good things are happening, then we don't have anything to compare it to when we're looking at a person who maybe isn't behaving in a way that's beneficial to themselves. So we've got to be able to look at this from that aspect. So we're going to focus on that student who helps the other student. We're going to focus on that person. Okay, not the person who dropped their books, but the person who's the helper. And we're going to be looking at, instead of looking at what's wrong, it's more of a what's right. Okay, so behaviorism, I gave you here that this person is stopping, expressing concern, picking up the books and handing them to the person who dropped them. So here again, I'm kind of listing out what I see. And these behaviors, we want this, right? We want more people to help people. So how should these behaviors be reinforced? This isn't one we necessarily want to change. We want them to help. Psychoanalysis. Whoops, sorry, I didn't do that. There you go. Psychoanalysis, I clicked the wrong button. Let's talk about their past. Maybe they were helped by someone else and it made them feel really good and they thought, hey, I'm going to help someone else. What happened to them in the past? Did someone help them? Did someone fail to help them? I don't know about you, but I've been in that situation where I dropped everything and I'm trying to pick it up and people are like walking around me and I'm thinking, really nobody can see me here, nobody can help me out. So maybe they were in a situation like that. So, we might want to look into their past and figure out, like, what happened to you in your past that makes you want to help this student. Or maybe they have that unconscious urge, or really giving urge. So maybe we want to consider, like, are you the kind of person who always steps in to help? Are you the kind of person who is always looking to assist others? That we might want to look at that. Humanism, that taking control. Well, I don't know about you guys, but like I said before, when I help someone, I feel pretty good about myself. And that might be a way of meeting an emotional need I have. I might have the emotional need to want to improve my confidence. So how does helping someone help me to grow personally? That's a good question, right? How is that helping me to grow? How is it allowing me to take control of my life? And last but not least, neurobiology. I'd sure like to get a picture of that person's brain and see what hormones and chemicals are going on. Maybe when they help others, there's a hormone that's kind of released that makes them feel good. Or maybe there's a chemical, like a chemistry change. Or maybe I need to look at their lobes. Maybe their lobes are the most perfectly shaped lobes ever. I don't know. So maybe with neurobiology, I want to focus on what aspect of neurobiology I want to focus on with them. Perhaps this releases a hormone into your bloodstream that makes you feel good about doing it, and so you want to do it again. I don't know. All right, so you did get a chance to see my next slide, and I just wanted to warn you, there are a couple sites out there that some of my students go to, and they'll go to them and try to get answers. And you have to keep in mind that, as Abraham Lincoln pointed out, not everything on the internet is correct. Just having a picture and a quote next to it doesn't make it accurate. And think about it. Think about when he was alive. You'll get the joke. So maybe you want to go to some of these sites out there. And I know other students have gone out and said, hey, help me with this, and people have helped. They don't always give the best answers. Just thought. So I want this to be your work. I don't want to see that you copied it from another website or something. I want to see that you are working on this on your own. And if you're struggling, you can come to me anytime. I am more than happy to help. And you can use some of the information I've put in here if you want to use some of these ideas and these points. All right, my friends, I hope you can dig this. I hope you feel like you can do this now. You're like, I can tackle it. I can take it on. And I hope you can make some beautiful music with these approaches and to kind of demonstrate your understanding of psychology. So have fun, my fellow psychologists. See what you can do with this information.